On February 10, Liangchening Arshilio in London. At the Ministry of Transport, precisely Shangwu Badian Senshifen GMT, Buckingham Palace made a public announcement stating that King Charles removed all the remaining titles, ranks, and privileges from Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, on a permanent basis, with effect from the same day. This follows the FBI confirmation of the confiscation of digital materials and financial records from the Sussex residence in Montecito under a sealed warrant on January 10, Liangchening Arshilio, on suspicion of wire fraud, false declarations, and possible misappropriation of charity money. A palace spokesperson then proceeded to read the Windsor Reformation Directive, Article T, which carried the personal signature of King Charles. The message went as follows: according to corroborated findings from our allied law and order agencies and breaches in public trust, the royal titles, military affiliations, and honors conferred to the prince known as Henry Charles Albert David were officially revoked in their entirety, without possibility of revocation or renewal, as duly approved and countersigned by the Privy Council, the Lord Chamberlain, and the Keeper of the Royal Archives. The FBI inquiry, allegedly initiated at the end of October, Liangchening Arshilio, after an encrypted whistleblower dossier was passed to Interpol's liaison office in the UK, involves three key accusations. First, the illicit transfer of more than 4.8 million USD of a charitable foundation donation to private consulting businesses associated with Meghan Markle's business interests. Second, evidence of a private encrypted server installed at the Montecito property to store donor communications, identification data, and foreign communications not reported to us or UK charity regulators. The third accusation is the forgery of at least 4 donor appreciation letters, including one forged signature of a deceased British veteran to be used in Invictus fundraising materials for Liangchening Arshilio. Princess Anne, also known as the Constable of the Royal Household, held an extraordinary news conference in an attempt to explain the institution's position on this rare occasion, which took place at St. James's Palace. What she made crystal clear was that the monarchy would no longer turn a blind eye to any case of fraud, would not allow anyone to make money out of serving in the military, nor would it allow anyone to exploit it for their own gain. She insisted that family matters must not be put first before national honor. Sources further reveal that Princess Anne urged the UK Charity Commission's Special Investigations Unit to investigate the related dealings. Liaising with UK's regulators as early as November, Liangchening Arshilio, after concerns emerged over a grant to a Commonwealth veterans group that had been months late. Shortly after her comments, Prince William issued a brief statement, being the Prince of Wales and the next in line to the institution. He emphasized how nobody was above such values as duty, transparency, and service, and that the decision of his father was absolute. He underlined that this was his duty to bear those standards, if at great personal cost. Reports further suggest that Prince William encouraged intelligence collaboration between the palace's Legal Integrity Office and the Metropolitan Police's Special Financial Crimes Directorate, culminating in a cross-jurisdictional memorandum sent to U.S. authorities last December. The existence of the document has since been confirmed by Whitehall officials. This was a controversy not dealt with behind closed doors, as prior royal controversies had been, but openly, transparently, and with due process. The official website of the royal family has been updated to remove all Prince Harry's former titles, patronages, and military distinctions. He is now listed in the court circular as Henry Mountbatten, Diane Windsor, with no royal designation. Official withdrawals include Honorary Air Commandant of RAF Honington, Captain General of the Royal Marines, Patron of the Rugby Football League, all ambassador roles for Commonwealth trusts, and the HRH usage in any official ceremonial or charitable contexts. In a forthcoming BBC Royal Dan coverage interview, a palace insider said the move wasn't about personal revenge, but about creating a reputational firewall. The Crown, the source said, cannot Zan, and will not Zan be tied to conduct under federal investigation. The Privy Council office published this severance protocol, a Sishard Zan page internal briefing outlining the immediate termination of all security measures, palace access, and travel privileges previously provided under the Windsor Accord of Liangchening Arshilio. Jarring in its absence from the statements, however, was Meghan Markle, whose name comes up repeatedly in FBI warrant appendices. Sources close to the palace say further disclosures about her financial dealings during her tenure are still very much under active review by U.S. prosecutors. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla is remaining silent, making no public statement about this issue. She is reportedly fuming privately because her son, Tom Parker Bowles, allegedly told Prince Harry to dump a former employee based on news from a Liaocening Arshar email that leaked, which stated, "If this ever reaches Interpol, we're all radioactive." Clarence House is conducting a thorough review of every correspondence between its office and the Foundation, from Liaocening Arshar up to Liaocening Arshar Si, a restricted summary of the FBI findings from the search of Prince Harry's California home, announced at Shanwushudan on February Liaocening Arshar was made public through the Office of the Royal Communications Office, in coordination with Buckingham Palace. The releases, which were done in consultation with legal officials from both nations, revealed particular acts of violation, which formed the basis of King Charles III's decision of February revoking Prince Harry's remaining royal privileges and all other hereditary rights. The FBI Fay report cited 3 areas of misconduct in the joint report. Overall, the first area of misconduct involved the fraudulent commercial exploitation of royal intellectual property, as indicated by encrypted devices and server records where Prince Harry is alleged to have signed off on the commercial use of royal crests, insignia, and the title of Duke of Sussex in an agreement with Dubai, Dan-based Alamir Holdings, Limited on November 6, Liaocening Arshar to promote a multi-10 million content licensing agreement. Second, undeclared financial flows and schemes involving concealment of assets. The investigators found 8 wire transfer operations, totaling 10 million ba Unilion in February and October Liaocening Arshar, facilitated by intermediaries in the Cayman Islands, Singapore, and Abu Dhabi. The assets were related to luxury real estate purchases in California and Qatar, but were not declared as expected based on the requirement related to Prince Harry's tax obligations that relate to both the U.S. and the U.K., given that Prince Harry is a resident in the U.S. Third is the presence of shell companies bearing royal Zand-themed nomenclature, and the suspected manipulation of custodial records and travel. Documents from the raid itself referenced in the investigation include Archie Protocol Final and El Travel Override docs, discussing the circumvention of custodial monitoring in relation to the Windsor Accord of Liaocening Arshar Si. Among these documents was the backdated affidavit, which stated that Archie and Lilibet possessed UK citizenship. This was done as an attempt to secure opportunities to access diplomatic immunity in the US. The law later pointed out discrepancies in Lilibet's record. Princess Anne, the highest legal authority representing the Institutional Standards Committee of the royal family, made an address at a news conference shortly after the publication of the report. From the White Drawing Room of St. James Palace, Princess Anne emphasized the point that the House of Windsor will not accept any traces of corruption, no matter whether the perpetrator holds a title of Duke, Prince, or Peer. Further, the monarchy must be a shield against abuse, not an enabler of abuse. Prince William, giving an extremely unusual scripted address at the Queen Elizabeth II Conference Center, said that compassion has now turned to deception. He said that he believed that his brother had broken the laws of the countries he lived in and dishonored the institution of his birth. The royal family, he added, was with the people, and not above them. The royal household immediately confirmed that the investigation would have their full cooperation. The British authorities have lodged a notice of intention to launch an investigation under the Proceeds of Crime Act over Prince Harry's undisclosed assets. The IRS Department of Justice and the FBI are presently examining allegations of tax evasion, concealment of funds, and false declarations. The FBI filed a sealed indictment to the U.S. Attorney's Office for Central California. Internal memos, as revealed by The Times, indicate that on February around Shangwu Liudian Sishiwufen, GMT, King Charles signed his royal order D. Fu Lianbai Arshar. In this signing, it is stipulated that the Duke of Sussex title is no longer recognized. The references of HRH are eliminated in international registries. Harry Mountbatten Windsor is no longer in the line of succession. ceremonial, diplomatic, and military appointments are revoked. Crown estates must disassociate from subsidiaries, and the last stipulation asserts that from this date he is not to be recognized in any title, capacity, and in no functional fashion as a representative of the Crown, nor of its historical lineage. This is a public revocation of a senior member of the royal family. No hidden court proceeding, no negotiated exile, just a simple revocation. By February, several major streaming platforms and publishing houses had halted negotiations on deals related to Sussex projects, citing an increasing sense of reputational risk. All the while, multiple ex-DAN executives related to the endeavors were reportedly subpoenaed as cooperating witnesses. At precisely DAN on February Lianshening Arshilio, a behind closed DAN doors briefing of the UK's senior national security leadership, and the royal household ushered in the beginning of what would be Prince Harry's hitherto changed treatment, held in the Cabinet Office briefing rooms, COBR. The meeting brought along the Home Secretary, the Director of GCHQ, the ME Chief, and senior members of the Royal Household Security Division. This was where the formal reclassification of the materials seized in California came, not just security DAN relevant, but also capable of destabilizing institutions. The official royal communique issued later that day said the briefing was centered on an FBI evidence package containing encrypted communications, metadata, digital transfer records, and 3 sealed testimonies obtained under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. The materials are said to have proved that Prince Harry knowingly received financial and logistical support from a foreign lobbying network with undisclosed ties to UK adversaries. Among those cited were communications retrieved from Harry's encrypted personal server in Montecito. Entities registered in Belize, the Seychelles, and the UAE were said to be linked to the front organizations used to shape UK media narratives and gain indirect access to confidential discussions about veterans' affairs, royal ceremonial planning, and UK's and US diplomatic efforts. Following the COBR meeting, Princess Anne and Prince William jointly authorized the release of 2 internally classified memos, dated October 10, Lianshening Arshawu, and November 10, Lianshening Arshawu. The first memo, from the Royal Institutional Affairs Office, warned of Harry's ongoing use of unauthorized data DAN access protocols during visits to UK facilities, conducted under the cover of Foundation DAN-related business. The second, from the Keeper of the Royal Archives, detailed a security irregularity surrounding the disappearance of 2 briefing drafts tied to King Charles's New Year transition planning. Those documents were later found embedded in a hidden partition of a storage drive, recovered by U.S. agents from Harry's California residence. A third development was announced at DAN on February through a formal briefing given by Lord Chamberlain Rupert Swafford. He verified that the charitable organization of Prince Harry had entered into a non-DAN disclosure contract with a tech company out of Dubai, which was supposedly to enhance cloud storage. However, other cyber experts from the UK and the US eventually verified that the company had been engaged in the exportation, copying, and cross-DAN checking of very sensitive communication materials that were meant for the royal schedules, discussions of the military patronage of the royal family, and the succession plan of the Duke of Kent. This case was not given the standard classification of data breach during the GCHQ FA National Cybersecurity Center briefing. At essentially the very same minute on that very same day, Prince William, acting in his full advisory capacity, lodged a statement of legal disentanglement and disassociation from his brother. This declaration, which was sent to the Royal Household Legal Affairs Registry, contained a 2-DAN-page summary pertaining to separation and disassociation, revoking any and all informal agreements pertaining to joint representation, armed security, cross-DAN walk privileges, and entitlements to use of the Royal Military Family Fund. A allegedly public version, which was released through Buckingham Palace, hinted that, effective immediately, Prince William and Henry Charles Albert David shall have no joint relationship, charitable, ceremonial, and fair logistical ties, and that all existing privileges, courtesies, and cooperative work are hereby declared null and void. In the meantime, Princess Anne, as the royal custodian of integrity, invoked clause 17 of the Royal Institutional Discipline Charter, the last use of which was in 10 This clause provides for the formal institutional expulsion of any blood relative whose actions threaten the integrity and security of the Crown and institutional discipline. This was done through the registered institutional writ, 10 subscribed by Princess Anne and witnessed by the members of the Queen's Council and the Privy Chamber Recorder. In an attempt to clear any doubts of censorship and internal hiding, the palace released a media transparency directive. According to this rule, all the actions taken, including the King's decree on the titles, were made open to all accredited media houses, aside from the content related to the current security intelligence issues. The Media Transparency Directive ended with the simple declaration, but this was the first time in modern history that internal royals and only disciplinary processes were ever flung wide open to the full glare of public scrutiny and journalistic enquiry. And in short, what King Charles would later describe as an irreversible move toward transparent monarchical government. Well before dawn broke on February a second formal statement was issued from the Royal Communications Office, with Princess Anne and Prince William, featuring as co-Jan signatories to announce a comprehensive internal examination of what became known as the California Compromise dossier. The jointly submitted report, prepared by the Privy Intelligence Liaison Unit, with the active assistance of the Metropolitan Royal Security Division, laid out more than 42 discrete findings drawn from the FBI operation. Each entry was carefully indexed, timed and stamped, and supported by corroborating digital evidence and emails, financial records, metadata chains, and surveillance transcripts. Perhaps the most explosive revelation was found in Section C-B, Foreign Entity Access via Private Domestic Royal Assets. A report indicated that Prince Harry had approved third Zan party access in late October to a secured digital archive that had initially been stored on Kensington Palace's network and then transferred to a server in California, managed under Meghan Markle's LLC, Zan Fei, apparently designed as a wellness company. Compromised materials included military routing schedules, royal household cybersecurity protocols, and archived correspondence originating from Queen Elizabeth II's post-Jan Brexit discussions with the Commonwealth. The breach of confidence cut on many levels. The threat was not only legal but also existential. One senior royal aide was anonymously quoted saying, "This isn't betrayal, Dan, it is a cathedral built with stolen keys." While King Charles reportedly remained at Sandringham Chapel that morning, seeking private counsel with his personal chaplain, Princess Anne had summoned an emergency meeting of the Royal Contingency Committee at St. James's Palace. She made a preservation motion there. According to Section Shar of the Sovereign Safeguard Protocol, a little known clause that allowed for the immediate erasure of illegitimate bloodline claims, both digitally and ceremonially. Prince William entered the room carrying a sealed red box marked Windsor Legacy Assets and gave his unconditional support. "My duty is to my country, not to genetics." By mid-Dan morning, Crown Cyberwatch had tagged Meghan Dan branded communications hubs in California for violation of royal intellectual containment rules. Her Los Angeles legal team, a Westwood boutique, was sent an extraordinary 10-page cease, Jan and Jan desist, notice signed by Lady Louise Windsor, recently named Junior Guardian of the Archives following her December investiture. In a surprising twist, Queen Camilla's name comes up twice in the FBI's redacted timeline, not as a player, but as someone who, perhaps unwittingly, helped move things along. The sharpest moment comes on November when her son, Tom Parker Bowles, hosts a private wine tasting at the Montecito estate. 3 guests identified only as foreign investors attended the closed Jan door event for over 4 hours. Leaked hospitality notes suggest the guests attended under diplomatic aliases. Camilla, apparently clueless of the wider reality, saw the gathering as an important step toward a culinary diplomacy effort loosely attached to the crown, and even forwarded a case of vintage Bordeaux marked Buckingham 10 The optics were disastrous. By February Camilla issued a statement via Clarence House, where she apologized for the incident and insisted she knew nothing about any misuse of royal identity or legacy. She said her son would step back from royals and associated duties temporarily. Public reaction was quick. Faye Windsor wine leaks trended, and a small protest grew outside Clarence House, with signs like, "Royal excess is not a commodity," and "Tom," or "traitor." As the fallout widened, Princess Catherine and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, met privately at Royal Lodge in a discreet session acknowledged by palace aides. Insiders say the talk focused on two big moves: a formal audit of all Markle-Dan-linked educational trust claims, and a strategic rethink of royal guardianship duties, amid new custody questions involving Archie and Lilibet. Both reportedly agreed on one core principle: the monarchy's institutional memory must not be exposed to commercial exploitation again. On February low, at Sawulodant, Catherine and Sophie issued a joint memo to the Windsor Ethics Oversight Panel. As expressed, the next generation must rise in loyalty, not leverage. Let the era of entitlement end tonight. That evening, a weary but resolute King Charles signed off on the order of erasure, an A5-page decree that strips Prince Harry's style of Royal Highness and strikes his line of coat of arms from all official heraldic registries. At Prince William's insistence, an added clause prohibited any use of the Sussex royal designation on digital or commercial platforms, actionable under international IP treaties. The closing line of the order declared, "By command of the Crown, the line that turned against the House shall bear no title, no token, and no shield." Those words reverberated across the globe as dawn broke with the first light of day. The headlines carried one stark fact: at 9:45 a.m. on the 29th of January. Inside Windsor Castle's crimson drawing room, King Charles held a very rare full House Royal Assembly behind sealed mahogany doors. But there were two missing pieces: Harry and Meghan. The summons had gone out only 48 hours after the results of the FBI's investigation, conducted quietly via diplomatic channels through the UK Home Office, filtered through to the royal household. This wasn't going to be a family chat. It was a reckoning. Princess Anne entered first, her face set as hard as stone, clutching a red folder stamped devolution dossier, Sussex declassification. Beside her, Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, cradled a silence that spoke volumes. Words never could. Prince William followed, guiding Catherine to the table. Her impassive exterior cloaked a mix of resolution and betrayal. She wore a simple navy outfit, reserved, somber, premeditated. At the head of the long table, King Charles sat, his signet ring already off, signaling a deliberate constitutional distance. Anne opened with the redacted files labeled FBI evidence, Montecito Vault, said to tie in to sealed audio recordings, metadata archives, and chain of custody images from the 11th of January federal inspection of the Sussex residence. Public reports spoke in broad terms, but the documents handed to the Crown privately were staggering. They referenced an offshore, unlicensed media fund in Meghan Markle's name, listing a number of royal properties as legacy assets: Frogmore Cottage and Clarence House. Digital contracts revealed undisclosed brand deals trading on images of children, possibly in conflict with the Windsor Accord on the protection of children in the line of succession. The recovery of 3 encrypted hard drives from a panic. Room Vault allegedly held emails referencing monetization plans coupled with internal palace records dating back to 2019. The files also hinted at links to Tom Parker, Bowles's 2022 charity auction controversy, where stolen Queen Elizabeth II memorabilia were allegedly funneled through third-party collectors linked to Meghan's former New York Faye-based PR firm. Not criminal under U.S. law, the material nonetheless indicated significant reputational damage and possible breaches of UK royal commercial rules. His fists clenched, Prince William broke the silence. "We warned him. We warned them both. But Harry didn't just sell the family. He sold the institution, and he used our children to do it." Princess Anne spoke without a moment's pause. He would no longer be considered Windsor. Born the shield no longer covers him. King Charles, gaunt and exhausted, finally spoke up. "We protected them in silence, and they repaid us with a manual of treachery, Sophie, after poring over forensic audit files that the Duchy of Lancaster had sent a few days prior, revealed a shocking new piece of information. Meghan had attempted to siphon as much as £1.4 million from royal event budgets in early 2020 into related consultancy deals, a claim that had never been made before. In the far corner, Catherine finally lifted her head. "I won't let our children grow up with a false history." Then King Charles stood and delivered what would later be confirmed as Verbal Order 73. As of the 1st of February, the man who had once been known as His Royal Highness, the Duke of Sussex, would be stripped of all royal titles, privileges, and succession rights. Using any royal symbols would be considered fraud and would be countered with palace, enforced injunctions. The decree came into force immediately. By the 2nd of February, all of Harry's military patronages were withdrawn, effective as of the 15th of January. The HRH titles for Archie and Lilibet were removed from official documents for the misuse of royal lineage. The UK Intellectual Property Office was instructed to hold back any pending product registrations that included British royal characters. Perhaps the most under the radar, but also the most damaging blow came from Catherine. In a private letter to the Archbishop of Canterbury, who had baptized George and Archie, she requested a spiritual assessment of the ceremonies surrounding the Sussex children, challenging the validity of rights claimed under false parental lineage. By the 3rd of February, Queen Camilla, who had been keeping a low profile until then, requested to be excused from any future state engagements, citing personal reflection. Later that day, palace sources confirmed that her son Tom Parker Bowles had been quietly removed from all royal charity boards that same afternoon. This was more than a removal. It was a deliberate teardown. The Royal Communications Office declared a special national address by Princess Anne and Prince William to be delivered on BBC One on the 8th of February to explain what happened next. One thing, however, was already clear: Prince Harry was out. Not only as a title, but as a fact. And the monarchy, born through the fire and scandal of centuries, had made its point. Buckingham Palace, the 7th of February, 2026, as the dust settled on the bombshells that led to Prince Harry's complete removal from the royal fold, the institution moved fast to set up lasting protections, most especially around the kids, the line of succession, and the legacy of Queen Elizabeth II. And so it was that day Lord Pembroke of the Privy Council announced Harry's name and presence were scrubbed from royal registries, court appointments, and ceremonial records under the finality of midnight on the 6th of February. Legally ceremonial, perhaps, but the weight of it is historic. Harry is no longer recognized by the Crown as a royal figure in any public or private role. Early this morning, Princess Anne was photographed leaving St. James's Palace. After a 4-hour closed session she presided over of the Royal Strategic Continuity Committee. Her leading that emergency meeting underlined how serious a moment it is. Leaked agenda notes suggest the committee agreed on binding legal language that would sever all sovereign liabilities associated with the Duke of Sussex, including those across foreign jurisdictions. The council concluded that Harry, Meghan, or their children would not bear any future state duties, fiscal, ceremonial, or custodial, under any scenario. In the meanwhile, Princess Catherine made an uncommonly public speech at Windsor Chapel to mark the end of Candlemas. Her speech did not allude in the least to the day's turmoil, yet the ending line had particular poignancy. "It is not the crown that defines character, but the conscience which honors it." The congregation stood in a standing ovation. Viewers pointed out that Catherine wore Queen Elizabeth II's sapphire and diamond brooch, a heirloom long entwined with moral clarity and continuity. Later, sources from the palace would confirm that King Charles handed over the brooch privately to Catherine back in December during an unpublicized ceremony, an action now perceived as a symbolic passage of spiritual stewardship within the monarchy. Her absence from both the Windsor Chapel service and the advisory meetings this week has given rise to more talk about her increasingly slipping grip. According to insiders, she is said to be unnerved by the increasingly strong voice of Princess Anne and especially Princess Catherine on issues with Harry and Meghan. To add to the concern, her son Tom Parker Bowles is also under the spotlight for his ties to a private fundraising dinner held on the 22nd of January in Santa Barbara, where talk of royal support was reportedly used despite Camilla's recent withdrawal from public duties. A palace representative refused to comment, but it is understood that Prince Edward has been asked to discreetly verify whether any titles, symbols, or royal support was improperly used. Meanwhile, Prince William is set to host an official foreign delegation reception at Forest Lodge next week, a newly appointed role that reflects his growing powers as acting sovereign. According to palace press briefings, ambassadors from 7 countries will attend, and the event will also see the first semi-official appearance of Prince George, who will meet guests under the supervision of his father. Public support remains firmly behind the monarchy's tough line. In a nationwide Ipsos UK poll held on the 5th of February, 79% of respondents supported King Charles's move to strip Prince Harry of all his titles, while 85% agreed that Meghan should no longer be styled as such. Most tellingly, however, over 91% confirmed that the monarchy was right to safeguard its reputation from further abuse. As of today, the doors to the House of Windsor are now and forever closed to the Duke of Sussex. And the last word sent out into the world is clear. The monarchy may forgive, but it will never be fooled again.